photos, and when I say I'm the official photographer here. This is mainly on stage.
Kenyan health workers won't relent as the effects of the doctors and nurses strike begins to set in. The trial of former LRA commander Dominic Ongwen set to begin at the International Criminal Court. President John Mahama and his challenger Nana Akufo press for votes as the country prepares for Thursday's election.
Good morning and welcome to Worldview. My name is Michael Gitonga.
My name is Solomon Serwanja. Many thanks for joining us for Worldview as we take a look at some of the stories making headlines across the globe.
Well, good to have you, Solomon. It's I'm used to seeing you on set from a different country in Uganda, but good to have you right here in Nairobi as we take a look at the Worldview.
It's certainly an honor for me to be here in the studios here. Of course, KTN continues to lead in the news, of course, in Africa and beyond. And speaking of which, again, let's go on to our top story now. Kenyan patients seeking services from public health facilities will face more anguish today as the nationwide health workers' strike enters day 2.
The situation remains unresolved following the collapse of talks between the Nurses' Council of Governors and the state. Officials
of the Kenya Medical Practitioners and Pharmacists Union insist that the implementation of the 2013 CBA holds the key to unlocking the pay impasse that has caused the crisis in the public hospitals and thrown the country's health sector into a disarray.
At least 8 patients are reported to have died yesterday across the country as doctors and nurses made good their threat to go on strike.
Jukumu la serikali la kuhakikisha kwamba daktari analipwa vizuri ili aweze kuhudumia wananchi, ili aweze kupeana huduma bora kwa wananchi. Kama daktari hajalipwa vizuri, hawezi pata nguvu ya kuhudumia wananchi. Daktari anaenda kwa hospitali kama kuna njaa kubwa sana. Akiwa anahudumia mgonjwa, anashikwa na njaa, anaanguka chini.
Akipasuana,
akiwa pale theater, anapasua, anaanguka chini. Sasa akianguka chini, nani atahudumia mgonjwa?
And now I would like to cross over to a reporter and also a doctor, Dr. Mercy Korir, and just to get an update. Good morning and thank you for joining us, Dr. Mercy. We are on to day 2 of the doctor's strike and there doesn't seem to be progress so far. Is that a fact or is there progress possibly from your end, Daktari?
Good morning, Mike, and good morning, Solomon. Well, day 2 of the strike is here, and it's actually a sad state of affairs because we don't seem to have any tangible headway so far. But our sources indicate that, remember yesterday during the press conference that the cabinet secretary held yesterday with a couple of governors, they're expected to have a meeting this morning. We are told the meeting will be at 10 a.m. Between the doctors' representatives and the Ministry of Health, together with the Council of Governors and the nurses. Whether these meetings will be concurrent or separate between the doctors and the government or the nurses and the government, we don't know yet.
Okay.
But as we heard yesterday from both parties, the nurses their resolve is unrelenting, same as the doctors. But we hope And we are optimistic, like the CS had said, that by the end of today that there'll be a solution to the current crisis.
All right. Do we know what the content of the meeting would be? Because as per the Secretary General's statement yesterday, it was nothing less than the CBA that would get doctors back to the hospitals. Is that still their stand?
From the doctors, yes. They still stand by the CBA. And of particular importance to the doctors' fraternity is the section of the CBA which outlines their monetary gain that they expect from the strike, and it's the 300%. And as we've been saying, it's the least paid doctor will be 325,000, and the highest paid will be 946,000 towards the different job cadres. As for the nurses, their request is for a CBA also. And now the difference between the doctors and the nurses is that the nurses' CBA has not been signed yet. It's still a proposed CBA, and it's still under negotiations between the 48 governments and the nurses. So the nurses want that CBA to be agreed upon, signed, and registered at the courts. As for the doctors, the CBA was signed on 2013, so the doctors want a total implementation of the CBA. But we hope they will get somewhere. We have no indication at the moment from the government side if they have an offer for the doctors or what that offer would be, but all they've been working around it. But from what we've been told and what we've heard is that SRC has been working around the clock to look at the CBA and its implementable, and if it is actually possible to implement it as it is, so that they can give the doctors and the nurses what it is that they're demanding.
All right, before letting you go, Daktari, that is the hard stance that the doctors have taken on the government. But when you meet as doctors, looking at the news, we have 8 people dead. We have patients from Mathare Hospital escaping. We have children who are on their bed suffering. What conversation do you have amongst yourself? Because there's still the human side of this.
Mike, and actually you'll be sad to know that as of this morning, we have at least 16 counties that are on total paralysis. That's from Nairobi to Isiolo to West Pokot, Kakamega, Kisumu, Garissa, and that was as of this morning, and it's day 2. So we don't know if now the skeleton staff that is there, if they'll still keep the services ongoing. However, we have few counties that are still having emergency services catered for, and unfortunately, these are like 3 counties, Nandi, Embu, and Turkana, who are just attending to emergency services. The good news is some counties are still working. So it's really a thin line between the doctors agitating for their rights and what they say is they should be compensated, and the cost of life.
All right, Daktari, thank you very much. And, well, we'll now cross over to Caroline B., who is at our INM studio. And she's been following up on the nurses' strike. So we have an ailing health sector. Caroline B., any updates from the nurses' end?
Concerning the nurses, they are also still expecting negotiations to continue. And as of yesterday, they actually met with the Council of Governors. But the meeting actually hit a dead end. Well, the government was still buying more time for them to be able to sort out the issues that the nurses are demanding. And the nurses said, well, if you're not going to negotiate with us, then the strike is going to go on. Well, today, day 2 is when the strike is actually getting in. Looking at the situations in hospitals, it's a very, very dire situation. Patients are dead, as you have actually said. If you look at the Mathare Hospital, some of the mental patients escaping yesterday from Kitui, in Molo, in Kakamega, in Bungoma, in Kisumu, some of the hospitals which have actually been affected by this strike, no services are currently ongoing. Everything is at a standstill. And maybe I can just point to one of the cases yesterday is that a pregnant lady delivered and on the hands of a security guard. There was also another issue where a child was left under the care of cleaners. And that is just points out to how serious this issue is. And the nurses have actually maintained that if negotiations are not going to go on as the government had promised, then this is going to be the worst strike ever reported by medics. And today, of course, as the talks continues, we're going to keep an eye to see what is going to happen. The SRC had already presented a presentation on the limit of maybe the funds that they actually have for both the doctors and the nurses. For the nurses, they are demanding for level for equality in allowances for nurses in different sectors. If you can just recall, there were nurses who were deployed by the defunct local government. There are those who are deployed from the national government to the counties, since health is a devolved factor for that matter. And if it is not going to be sorted out, I think we should just expect a strike. That is as per the nurses. Services are continuing, will still be in a standstill. Mike?
All right, and as you talk to the nurses, is there any hope that we see at the end of the tunnel? Or are they sticking to their guns as well until these demands that they have are implemented? They will not go back to hospital.
Well, Mike, as of yesterday, given the address by CS Cleopa Mailu, he actually said that the negotiations for nurses were still ongoing, and he did not understand why the nurses had to strike. But the nurses maintain that, they have actually presented their pleas over and over, but the government seems, to be keeping a blind ear to their pleas. And they say that if the government is not going to maybe keep an eye on what they are demanding, then the strike is going to go on. And as I have mentioned, a meeting this morning was currently ongoing between governors, the Ministry of Health officials, and the union officials as well, just to fast track or to continue with the negotiations that had already started and see a way forward for the strike that has actually affected various public hospitals in the country.
All right, Caroline B., we are following up on this, and we're going to see how this continues. Thank you very much, Caroline B. And at this point, I would like to bring in Solomon as we now move on to the next story here, and this is to do with Dominic Ongwen, top lieutenant of Lord's Resistance Army.
Well, speaking of which, we now go to the International Criminal Court in The Hague, where Dominic Ongwen, a top lieutenant of the Lord's Resistance Army leader Joseph Kony, goes on trial. Today, he's accused of war crimes committed during the rebel group's long rampage in northern Uganda. Dominic Ongwen faces war crimes ranging from child kidnapping and forced marriages to rape and murder. The trial of Dominic Ongwen opens as the International Criminal Court faces the biggest crisis in its 15-year history, with several members of states quitting over claims that it unfairly and singles out Africans for prosecution. Trixie Ngodu now gives us a down low of Ongwen's trial, who was himself a victim of the LRA child kidnapping campaign in 1988.
Dominic Ongwen, a top lieutenant of Lord's Resistance Army leader Joseph Kony, goes on trial in The Hague on Tuesday, accused of war crimes ranging from child kidnapping and forced marriage to rape and murder during the rebel group's long rampage in northern Uganda. It will be the first time charges of forced marriage are central to an ICC prosecutor's case. Ongwen faces 70 counts of war crimes and crimes against humanity for attacks on refugee camps in northern Uganda between 2002 and 2005, including committing or directing acts of rape, sexual enslavement, and of conscripting child soldiers.
Most of the people who have killed in the camp, they are killed by the gun, panga, stick. Other people are burnt inside. These young children would tear into pieces and throw them in the fire.
Ongwen was himself a victim of the LRA's child kidnapping campaign in 1988, pressed into service as a young teenager in Kony's war against the government of President Yoweri Museveni, who had seized power 2 years before.
We charge Dominic Ongwen only for the crimes that he is alleged to have committed after he was an adult. And this is how we intend to proceed with the case. What the judges will decide about the fact that he himself was abducted is really a matter for the judges.
He will be asked to plead guilty or not guilty, after which prosecutors on a later date, his lawyers are expected to argue he is as much a victim as perpetrator.
Nhiều pegi quan weng no chwalo kar no pien iwi lovely en iram lo beach no lo chiele yeti ada ram lo mia no lo rio yeti ada chi kwano dul lo en go ba nyo ada ni no bala me car cham ken no me yo be look ek dul down in America look no tie pian book en no tie kam no go ni le ba chuan no an be ti kwan ne for you.
Enslaved the survivors to carry away the loot and to serve as child soldiers and sex slaves, nursing mothers whose babies slowed up the progress or who simply cried too loudly, saw them killed or thrown into the bush and left behind.
The ICC brought charges against Ongwen, Joseph Kony and 4 others who are believed dead in 2005. Ongwen gave himself up to U.S. troops last January after a decade on the run, fearing for his life after falling out with Kony, who is still at large. The trial of Dominic Ongwen opens as the International Criminal Court faces the biggest crisis in its 15-year history, with several member states quitting over claims it unfairly singles out Africans for prosecution. For the ICC, the start of the trial is a rare positive, coming after South Africa and Gambia announced their withdrawal from the court over allegations of anti-African bias and amid criticism from President Rodrigo Duterte of the Philippines, one of the court's few Asian members. Trix Ingado, KTN News, Nairobi.
Well, many thanks, Trix. Now, we'll be following that event for you. So, according to the schedule today, the charges will be read onto Dominic Ongwen, who will either plead guilty or not guilty. There will be an official opening statement from the prosecutor and the lawyers of the victims who are also in Hague right now. And therefore, that story, we will keep an eye for you later on. We could also relay it live on KTN. Miles away from the Hague in Uganda, where Leon Senyange is standing by for us. Victims will be watching this case live after the International Criminal Court set and allocated different places where they will be viewing it. Let's now go to senior journalist Leon Senyange joining us live from Gulu. A very good morning, Leon. If you can bring us up to speed with the mood in Gulu. Will justice finally find its way to Uganda, Leon?
Well, Solomon, good morning. From Gulu, I must say that there's great anticipation going into the start of the trial of Dominic Ongwen in Gulu. But just to add, I'm actually on my way heading to Abok, one of the viewing sites that have been chosen for the start of the trial of Dominic Ongwen. Our Abok is about 60 kilometers away from Gulu, the epicenter of the LRA war. But it is here that victims will have the viewing of the court proceedings. And there's certainly great anticipation. Many are looking forward to seeing how it will all turn out. And we all know that a total of approximately 4,000 victims or even more will be taking part in the proceedings. But those that will be in Abok and many others surrounding the northern area of Uganda will be following keenly. Now, the ICC or the court is also producing several audiovisual programs to allow many Ugandans to follow the judicial proceedings. And in some places, face-to-face outreach activities will also be held for various groups. So many people are definitely keen on the proceedings, and we'll be looking forward to seeing how justice will finally be achieved. I must say it may take several months or even years to have a verdict coming out, but definitely for many, it is already a start.
Well, Leon, you've been speaking to some of the people in Gulu. Do they feel that this prosecution will heal the wounds of the atrocities that were committed and eventually justice will take its way?
Well, there's quite a mixed feeling about Dominic Ongwen as the person. Several feel that since he was kidnapped and he was forced into committing some of the atrocities, then, of course, how do you judge him? And others feel that while, regardless of whether he was kidnapped, he still committed the atrocities. So he actually has to face the law and this particular case. But on the whole, there's definitely the feel that while the people of northern Uganda actually suffered from the atrocities of the Lord's Resistance Army a couple of almost a decade ago, and mostly Dominic Ongwen between 2003 and 2004, they feel that justice has to be served, and regardless of how he pleads on the case, many still feel that he has to be brought to book.
Leon, the trial of Dominic Ongwen comes at a time when many African states are pulling out of the ICC, speaking of which, of course, we know several countries have denounced their president, including South Africa, Burundi, among others. Is Uganda looking at pulling out of the International Criminal Court, considering that President Yoweri Museveni has been championing the campaign against the International Criminal Court?
Well, it's a matter that has been on the table for quite some time, but not as much has been said around or surrounding Uganda's possibility of pulling out. It certainly can happen anytime, but in reference to Dominic Ongwen's matter, I believe it is partly a bit of a small concern of Dominic Ongwen. But the bigger issue is beyond Dominic Ongwen, who would be the next Ugandan, who will be the next Ugandan politician, who will be the next Ugandan to go into the ICC. So there's greater concern at that level. And I still think it is a matter on the table. Ugandan Ministry of Internal Affairs and Foreign Affairs actually have discussed this particular matter, but it is still one I believe is on the table and is still a possibility.
Well, Leon Senyange joining us on phone from Gulu. Many thanks, Leon, for that report. Keep an eye for us. We'll come back to you. Of course, this story of the International Criminal Court comes against the background as opposition leaders in Uganda are pushing for President Yoweri Museveni to be tried at the International Criminal Court for the death of over 60 people in the Kasese crashes. We'll also keep an eye for you. And going back, that very story forms the basis of our poll question this morning. Do you believe that the LRA victims in northern Uganda will get justice through ICC's trial of former child soldier Dominic Ongwen? Again, do you believe that LRA victims in northern Uganda will get justice through ICC's trial of former child soldier Dominic Ongwen? Just go on Twitter and let those answers coming through. My Twitter handle is @SolomonSeranj. We'll be sharing those views later on today as we continue with the bulletin. Well, let's go to Rwanda, where go digital or get out of business is the message that Rwanda's city of Kigali officials seem to be making to billboard owners as it affects a bylaw that only allows digital outdoor advertising, where an advertising firm in Rwanda is counting the losses after the city of Kigali expedited impromptu orders to bring down billboards in Kigali. The Rwanda Outdoor Advertising Association calls for 18 months grace period for the removal of the billboards being undertaken by the teams from the city of Kigali. Now, those have fallen on deaf ears. According to the city authorities, the existing billboards had become public nuisance, caused visual population, and were a potential source of accidents. Now, most of the billboards are rented for a cost ranging from $900 to $1,200 a month, generating about $1,000 to $12,000 per year. Let's now join KTN's Eugene Anwangwe joining us on Skype from Kigali, Rwanda. Very good morning to you, Eugene. Again, advertisers crying foul, Eugene, saying that they have not been given ample time for them to be able to get the billboards out. If you can bring us up to speed with this story.
Good morning, Solomon. Great to see you. Of course, let me give you a chronological, timeline of events concerning this particular story. Now, the Kigali city passed an outdoor advertising regulation in 2012, and this was actually published in the official gazette, which was put on the 20th of October 2012. This particular new regulation was designed to comply with traffic and road safety, and in December 2015, it is believed that all outdoor advertisers and stakeholders were actually requested to comply with these new regulations within a period of 6 months. In September 2016, this year, the city of Kigali actually says that it met with the members of the Rwanda Outdoor Advertising Association on several occasions, and there was an agreement to actually implement these standards within a 2-week period. And so the members of the association are actually accused by the city of Kigali of having acted selectively and removed only the billboards which were belonging to non-association members. Now, Solomon, it also said that in consultation with the billboard owners, the other stakeholders also brought on board, and the Kigali city official did actually amend the billboard advertising instructions to not just only comply with the road safety laws, but also to modernize outdoor advertising in the city of Kigali. This actually was published also in the official Gazette of Rwanda in October 2016. Now, let me fast forward to October 2016. The city of Kigali invited members of the Rwanda Outdoor Advertising Association to take part in what it says was a tender process for outdoor advertising in accordance with these new regulations. They also said that is the city of Kigali, that they wanted to accommodate local businessmen in dealing with the advertising. And so they changed the tender from international to local. And what the city says is that the outdoor advertisers did not actually take part. Only 7 of the association members opted to go out the court to seek an injunction to stop the tender process, a case which they actually lost.
Well, speaking of which, now they lost the case. It means that the city authorities are going to implement that order. Are there viable reasons for Kigali to order these billboards to come out, because they are the first in East Africa at least?
Right, Solomon, Rwanda is always on the move, wanting to always be the first in such kind of things. Of course, the city says this is, apart from road safety issues, it's also out to eliminate site pollution. And of course, we understand that the Private Sector Federation, which is the umbrella body for private sector members, has actually weighed in on this particular issue. The body actually does what we call advocacy for its members, and they have sent a request to the mayor's office, and this request was actually sent on November 15th, proposing that the authorities postpone the removal of these bills. But this also has fallen on deaf ears, because the last billboards are actually biting the dust as we speak, Solomon. And of course, the advertisers say that the city management should actually pay attention to their requests, and has also called for more consultation with stakeholders to discuss the way forward. But all this seem to be falling on deaf ears, Solomon.
Well, Eugene, you did mention site pollution. It's the first time I'm hearing that. Site pollution versus revenue. How is the Rwanda city going to balance it up with the revenues that the people who have been putting up these billboards have been paying to the authorities? And what is the way forward out of this?
Right. Solomon, the city of Kigali insists that it is acting within the law, because after the High Court verdict, authorizing the city of Kigali to go ahead with implementing the new outdoor advertising regulations, the city says it is actually moving on with this particular, implementation process. And of course, they insist that these instructions were given to advertisers, and they were given a grace period of 1 month for implementation. And that period actually expired on 18th of November, 2016. So we are not anticipating or expecting any compensations or any backing off by the city authorities. Solomon.
Eugene Ongwen joining us on Skype from Kigali, Rwanda. Many thanks, Eugene, and keep following that story for us. All right, let's go to Ghana, where campaigns in the Ghanaian election came to an end on Monday as Ghanaians prepare to head to the polls on Wednesday. About 15.8 million Ghanaians registered to cast their votes, a figure that represents 57% of the country's population. On his final campaign rally in Accra on Monday night, the incumbent president, John Mahama, said that Ghana has been the most peaceful and stable nation in Africa under his protection. The election is widely seen as a two-horse race between Akufo-Addo and President Mahama. Over the weekend, Mahama took to Twitter to call on Ghanaians to ignore any form of provocation, asking the Ghanaian to vote and wait for the results peacefully. Now, Ghana became the first African country to gain independence from a colonial rule in 1957 and is seen as a role model for democracy on the continent. And if neither sides win more than 50% of the votes, Ghana will go for a second round in December.
Mahama was doing. He's doing well and is going to win Inshallah, he's winning hands down, one touch, no second round.
I still want him to improve on the education because education is everything. That is what we wanted in this country. The infrastructure, the economy, and to bring more jobs.
The other opponent, his father was once a president in this country, so he should tell us what his father did for the country, so we will vote for him. His father was once a president in Ghana, and they did nothing for Ghana, so we can't even trust him to give him our vote. So we are giving it to JM for him to continue the good work he's doing for Ghana.
And Ghana has continued to be the most peaceful and stable nation in the whole of Africa. Everything we have achieved working together as Ghanaians. And all of us must share in that success.
Now, in the last 24 hours before voters in Ghana head to the polls, presidential candidate Nana Akufo-Addo warned the country's democracy is in a critical space.
AKA Akufo-Addo accused the ruling party of fomenting violence, with police turning a blind eye, casting doubt on the country's reputation as a beacon of democracy in Africa.
During the bitter presidential campaign, New Patriotic Party NPP candidate Akufo-Addo criticized incumbent John Mahama of mismanaging the economy and allowing corruption to mushroom. Elections in Ghana are often down to the wire. Akufo-Addo has narrowly lost twice before, but the economic crisis may swing voters his way.
As exporters of gold, cocoa and oil, the West African country was once hailed as the regional growth model, but has lost its lure after taking on too much debt.
In party are dealt with according to law. Across the country, we believe there are raw materials and economic opportunities in all the districts of Ghana that can find expression in industrial, semi-industrial activities and enterprises, and we're going to encourage that. The key is how we're going to reverse the downward slide of the economy, how we're going to grow the economy again. We believe we have a lot of policies in place that are going to allow us to do that.
French Socialist Prime Minister Manuel Valls has announced he is standing in next year's presidential election. Valls said he wanted to give everything for France. He spoke days after President François Hollande announced he would not be running. Valls will face another contender in the Socialist primary next month. If successful, he will set face to François Fillon and Marine Le Pen as the first round of presidential election in April.
He was promoted from France's top cop to premier in 2014, charged by the president with reining in defiant ministers. Back then, Manuel Valls famously called himself the boss. And 2 years later, his record shows he's not here to make friends, even within his own party. As PM, he rammed contested labor reforms through parliament.
And now we'd like to take a phone link, and this is with Sam Ato, who's a journalist in Ghana. And of course, this is in light of the election that is scheduled for Wednesday. Good morning, and thank you for joining us, Sam. Now, just let us know, what is the political temperature in Ghana as we speak?
Well, good morning and greetings to Kenyans. Well, as you can expect, the atmosphere here is very heightened. There's a lot of tension here. However, people here also understand that there's a need for peace. And so you can hear all over the place that everybody is preaching peace, 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 peace. It appears the whole world is looking up to Ghana, watching Ghana to see if once again Ghanaians will be able to have a peaceful and probably fair election. Let me quickly add that yesterday there was a press conference by the Commonwealth Observer Mission to Ghana, headed by former President of South Africa, Thabo Mbeki. And then they are saying that from what they have gathered so far, from reports on the ground they have gathered, they expect the election to be free and fair and also very peaceful. A few issues have come up. For example, there were about 3 bags stacked with fake ballot papers found in the stronghold of the opposition party. Well, it's been proven that they are fake papers, but the police are still investigating to find out who really stashed them there and what was the motive for having those ballot papers in a police in a hotel, I should say. Now, there are a lot of prayers ongoing, prayers and peace messages from and very, very popular and very big religious leaders, the churches especially, preaching peace to other people. The imams are preaching peace. So all over the place, you can see that there's a lot of tension in the atmosphere. However, beneath that, everybody is talking about peace, 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 peace. One thing that has sought to, in a way, mar the beauty of the whole process was during the special voting exercise on the 1st and then extended to the 4th of December, when security agencies could not find their names in the voters' register. But however, the Electoral Commission said they will do everything possible for them to vote tomorrow, being Wednesday, then they can go to their duty post. It would also interest you to know that this is a new electoral commissioner, a lady to preside, and this is her first job. And she's come under a lot of criticism by the opposition. So she has a lot at stake to make sure that this election goes very peaceful, free and fair, to avoid the electoral petition that we had at the Supreme Court after the last elections we had. Yes.
All right, Sam, and Ghana has been seen world over for a long time within Africa to be one that holds credible election. And I'm sure this year probably is going to be the same. Maybe I'll get your comments on that. But what do you think is the secret?
The secret to having peaceful elections. Yes, you see, Ghana has lots of tribes, and that's one thing that we really thank God for, because you see that intermarriages, inter-tribe marriages. So you have a family where you have about maybe the husband and the wife, you belong to different tribes, and then lots of friends and all that. So we discuss issues. However, before the elections, like I said earlier, there's a lot of peace messages, and lots of it. So on social media, people will criticize, but then underneath that, they talk about peace. So we even had the political candidate signing a peace accord, and so official campaigning ended yesterday. Now for today, for 24 hours to the election date, there's a lot of peace by these candidates themselves. So there's also the perception that Ghanaians are cowards, in quotes, when it comes to this. So the Ghanaians seem to lack that energy and they need to fight. And so that is also preach to people. But then the underlying thing is that there's a lot of messages going all around the place by influential people talking about peace, peace, peace. And I think that is sinking to the people. And the fact that it seems that the judicial system is also working. It seems. I mean, it's a perception. It seems that because the last elections, the opposition party thought the election had been rigged. They went to court, and then we followed the process. And then after 4 years, we go to the post again. So there's that perception that Ghanaians are peace loving. But then it's about the peace that is peace all the time. So on radio, on television, the newspapers, everybody's talking about peace, peace, peace. And probably that should be the secret. Yes.
All right. Finally, before we let you go, Sam, I don't know if you have pollsters who've been doing their work and trying to predict which way it might go. Which way have they been predicting, if there are any?
Yes, in Ghana, I would say the biggest and the most credible pollster, Benefin, he owns a newspaper, previously had predicted from his opinion polls and sampling that the opposition party was going to win. But in the recent poll that came out about 2 weeks ago, he predicted a one-third victory for the president. So we are waiting. The opposition has said that the result was not credible for them. I mean, they thought the sampling size was small and all that. But then as it is now, it appears that it's obvious it's between the ruling party and the biggest opposition party. But the pollster said and insists that they will go in favor of the ruling government and one-third victory for them. So we are waiting to see from tomorrow.
All right, thank you very much, Sam. That's a reporter, a journalist in Ghana, Sam Atto.